Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's another week. It's another Saturday. A little bit gloomy outside, unfortunately. But as I've said in the past, no weather in any conditions snow, sleet, hail, rain, thunderstorm well, barring Xfinity connection, will stop us from delivering you the best NFL podcast going out there on a live weekly basis. Welcome back to another edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, your usual triumvirate trio that is very much troublesome, that loves to just cause chaos, is here to talk about the NFL news that we have gotten over the last week and a half or so since the last episode that we had a good couple of transactions here that might be leading to something more or another disappointing deadline, to say the very least. But before we get into all that, of course, I must introduce the rest of this amazing trio. First off, on the screen with me on the upper side, the Games Master, future Wheel of Fortune host. I'm pretty sure that's the next one that'll be up for grabs, I assume. Justin, how we doing?
Am I muted? I think I'm muted. No, I'm not muted. Hey, what's going on?
he wasn't sure there first.
I was looking something up, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I leave myself on mute most of the time when I do that, so it wasn't.
All good this time. Good to have you again, as always, brother. And at the bottom of the screen, the man who's been a busy bee over the last week and a half or so for things in his own personal life, of course, that are happening. I will not divulge them, of course. But I think the real thing that we are slowly building up towards, I talk about things we're building up toward, Justin. What I'm looking forward to will be the second ever rant before Christmas that Rick is going to give us here in 2 months' time. The year has gone by, to say the very least. So busy things happening in the Podfather's household. Rick, how we doing?
I'm exhausted, man. You reminded me of that, and that's true because I've got the Rantsmith Express coming in 2 months, so that'll be a lot of fun. And in case you're wondering, by the way, the forecast today called for flying pirates.
There you go. And there was Billy Shakes celebrating because I think he did. He won last week, didn't he?
He did. Yes, he won. He got to 9 points.
There we go. And I mean, he'll be hoping for more because again, a bit of a short change week. Is he only going to have one game again this week?
Right? He's got 2 this week, actually. Ooh. So 2 teams on bye.
All right, so less multiplier in terms of what he'll get on our Wheel of Chaos, but still a chance for him to start making up some ground potentially if he goes 2-0. Which, oh god, that would be funny if he just starts a mid-season charge. Wouldn't that be?
He's got a long way to go, though.
Oh, indeed. But hey, he can catch up. So before the pirate tries to make us walk the plank later on in the episode with the hashtag SAOC pick challenge, as we bring every single week, we have more to do because it's fun, football, and chaos. The chaos is saved well, it's kind of sprinkled throughout the show, but the chaos is mainly saved to the end. Let's get to the first part of that. Let's get with some fun. And as always, the Podfather is here to educate the people. Rick, let the people know. Teach the people the mind-blowing fact this week.
So, I wanted to go into a movie sort of realm with my mind-blowing fact of this week. As I'm sure you guys know, there is an unquestioned action masterpiece that everyone talks about and everyone deliberates and debates on whether or not it is a Christmas movie or not, and that's Die Hard. Because, it takes place during Christmas time at Nakatomi Plaza, but can you really count it as a Christmas movie? But that's not the fact that I'm talking about today. So Die Hard came out in 1988, I believe it was. Bruce Willis, of course, John McClane. But did you know there is actually a prequel of sorts to Die Hard? So the author of the book Nothing Lasts Forever, which was turned into Die Hard, Roderick Thorpe, 13 years prior to writing Nothing Lasts Forever in 1979, wrote a book called The Detective in 1966. And in 1968, Hollywood made a movie called The Detective, which was based on Roderick Thorpe's novel. And so, if you think about it, the spiritual successor to The Detective was Die Hard, which means that the spiritual predecessor to John McClane and Bruce Willis was a character by the name of... Any guesses? Anyone? Well, you're never going to get it. It's Sergeant Joe Leland, who was played by Frank Sinatra. So, if you follow the timeline, Frank Sinatra in that movie is a spiritual predecessor to the John McClane diehards that we all know and love. So, how about that? For an interesting little factoid there for you, boys.
Well done.
Thank you.
I thought, honestly, I thought the fact was about to become a mini TED Talk here, because I thought, is Rick going to convince everyone that Die Hard is actually a Christmas movie, like definitively? Like open shut case finally?
No, see, I'm not the source on telling you what is a Christmas movie or what is not a Christmas movie. Because I do love Die Hard and I do believe that it is a Christmas movie, but I'm not the source of that, because then you have to talk about Die Hard in the same breath of It's a Wonderful Life, and in the same breath of Miracle on 34th Street, and to a lesser extent Krampus. So I mean, I don't know. I really can't be the source of all of that. I'm the source for many other things, but I'm not the source of that. By the way, there's also an Eli Roth vehicle coming out called Thanksgiving, which I don't know if you've seen the trailer for it. It is Eli Roth is a weird dude, man. There is some gore in that movie that is quite interesting. So,
well, I don't think a lot of people will disagree with the sentiment about Eli Roth, to say the very least. That is, once again, ladies and gentlemen, another mind-blowing fact. Die Hard had a prequel, and it was the successor to a movie spiritually.
Yeah,
look at that. Rick continues to deliver every single week, unlike certain NFL teams and certain head coaches that get paid $100 million to turn things around. Anyways, the fun continues, ladies and gentlemen, because we go from mind-blowing facts to mind-testing questions. I finally found a transition for that. We got some trivia from our man Justin. So, Justin, what do you got this week to try to stump me and Rick?
Guys, who's the all-time leader in receiving touchdowns by a tight end?
Antonio Gates?
Yeah.
Was that it?
That was it. That was the answer. Antonio Gates has 116 touchdowns. It's the most all-time. What about receiving yards per game?
Ooh. By a tight end.
By a tight end.
See, there was the one slow season in his career, but he's been amazing ever since. Travis Kelce.
Jerg, what the hell?
Wait, did I actually get that?
Jerg, Travis Kelce at 71.7 yards per game. He is almost a full 7 yards higher than the next best player.
And then the next best player would be
probably like Tony Gonzalez or something like that.
If George Kittle has been a little bit healthier, I would be very tempted to say him, because he's got a couple really good seasons. But I think the years where he's gotten a little bit injured have kind of downgraded that. So I'm willing to go with you on the Tony Gonzalez thing. Although another guy, what do you think of this, Rick, for second place? Shannon Sharp as a contender, perhaps?
I like that one. That's a good one too, I think. Yeah, that's very good.
So we'll both submit those two guesses. Tony Gonzalez for Rick and Shannon Sharp for myself.
All right. Well, George Kittle is actually third currently in receiving yards per game. Tony Gonzalez is fifth at 56 yards per game. And Shannon Sharp is seventh at 53 yards per game.
Okay. So Uncle Shay. We said Tony, Kittle, Kelce. See, another guy who it's because of injuries that I kind of question it, but I feel like naturally he would be the answer here. I mean, I think he set the single season touchdowns for a tight end. So, and that season he definitely got over 1K. So I don't think it would be a bad guess. All right, Gronk.
64.9. Gronkowski is the second all-time leader in rushing yards per game. I'm receiving yards per game by a tight end.
Look at that. I wonder how many. I wonder how many of those like injury-riddled seasons, if you take it out, would get his average yards per game total to 69.9, which he would absolutely love it if it was that.
I don't know, but that's it's impressive, Jerry. You're on a roll today.
Yeah, I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
The Antonio Gates one, because to me, Justin, longevity is always the big thing that you got to consider. And when you consider just how long Antonio Gates was there, he honestly, not to say that he didn't have something, but he probably played a year or two longer than most expected.
He did have a few touchdowns those years, though.
Exactly. That's what led me to
I
it.
think it was only one his last year, but I think the second last year he had like 6.
Exactly. Like that's why, like, even though he probably played an extra year or two than most expected, he was a really good tight end still in his second to last season of his career. Like him and Philip Rivers, just that connection, man. It was just forever, to say the very least. Like, yeah, look at that.
I got one for Justin.
Oh, yeah?
But that's why he went away, ladies and gentlemen, because he's been looking for that. What do we got, Rick?
Most career yards per catch by a tight end.
Yards per catch.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I'm going to assume it's someone that maybe had more yards and less catches. Part of me wants to go with like a Jimmy Graham because he caught so many long balls in his career. But the way Rick is shaking his head no makes me think that that's not the answer. So I'm going to say, I mean, it would be very obvious if it was Tony Gonzalez because he has it literally every other record.
You are in the wrong era of football.
Oh, then I'm not going to get it.
Well, I mean, here's the funny part.
I think you could think more. I think you could think a little bit more modern, Justin. Is that what you're saying? I think so.
I'm just messing with him. I'm not actually asking this question for him to get the answer to. I think this is funny. So here's the thing. This guy was a New York Jet, actually. He was a New York Jet from 1970 to 1977.
Never mind.
And finished his playing career in 1982. Second round pick out of Jackson State.
The Wi-Fi would cut out the second he's about.
Second he says the answer. Yeah.
Rich Castor is the gentleman's name. 17.7 yards per catch. And what's interesting about it as well, Jerg, does the last name Castor ring a bell to you?
Well, there's Zencaster, the audio recording platform, and there is Max Caster currently on AEW.
His dad.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep. Rich Castor, his career was 322 catches for 5,515 yards, 45 touchdowns, and a 3-time Pro Bowler, also a Super Bowl champion with the Washington Redskins in 1983, which was his final season in the NFL. So he went out on top.
Look at that.
With a title.
Okay. What? Hey,
second round pick out of Jackson State. Suck it, Dion.
Oh God. Leave those Sanders boys alone, Rick.
Which ones?
All of them. Yeah, what a banger of a trivia. I wish I had tight end trivia ready. I did not have any ready.
You had all the answers ready, so
yeah, it seems so.
You bring the trivia at home.
Yeah,
that's what
true.
you do.
That's very true. It's very true. Oh God. Well, I believe that is that the only one you had, Rick?
Oh yeah, no, I'm good.
And Justin, I think those were all your questions, correct?
That was all my trivia, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of tight end trivia, to say the very least. What a rousing round it was. Rick got to take that segment off, basically. Well, I mean, he took it off to find some trivia to hit back at Justin.
Yeah, well, it was just like basically, I was thinking about the answers, and all of a sudden, George swoops in with the dagger, and I'm just like, all right, Ultron, whatever.
Yeah. Daggers like Connor Bedard will be thrown soon enough here in the professional hockey ranks. But as the trivia portion of the games ends, we still have a little bit more. Ladies and gentlemen, what's just as fun as trivia to be able to play? Some fact or fiction.
Yahtzee. Oh, fact or fiction.
Oh, well, wait. You know what? If we're talking about physical board games, Yahtzee's up there for sure. What's it called? Uno as well. We got to live play Uno one day. That would just be absolutely chaos.
Our viewers would love that.
Yeah. What viewers? But all right. And in all seriousness, let us continue the show here with the games. Justin, we got some fact or fiction to hit the people with here. What do we got to test people as Rick's? I can't tell if he's frozen or if he's just been able to hold the face for that long. It's very impressive if it is the latter there. But as we wait, maybe your fact or fiction will get some kind of a reaction out of him. What do we got, Justin?
All right. Fact or fiction? Russell Wilson is to blame for the Broncos' struggles.
You're talking about just this season, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You got to make it sure, Justin. I just have to make sure because we're talking about so far in his tenure. Well,
yeah. Yes.
But now if we're talking about this season, Russell Wilson is to blame. See, here's the thing. Here's hold on, as we have a special guest welcoming back into the studio. All right, Rick.
Russell Wilson is to blame. I heard that part, and so it's a fact. Yes, move on.
Well, I was going to say, I just need one so when you say is to blame, are you talking about majority? I assume you're talking about like majority blame, like first person.
The reason they're not winning games is because of Russell Wilson.
I would say fiction so far this season. Overall, I know he's had like a rough game or two semi-recently, but Russell Wilson has actually somewhat returned to at least the stats that he put up when he was in Seattle. The interception numbers are relatively down, so to speak. Well, they were a lot better before the Kansas City game on Thursday night. But he has actually looked better this season. Now, ultimately, is he going to be the same quarterback he was at the peak of his powers? No. It's too much to ask of him to be able to do it. I just don't think he can do it anymore. But at the same time, the defense has massively regressed in Denver. And for all the shots that Sean Payton was taking at Hackett before the start of the season, which, to be fair, were accurate. At the same time, you can't take the shots at the guy who came before you, and then the team is producing at a worse clip in the facet that they were very strong in last season. Now, part of that to me is still ultimately at the end of the day, well, there's a talent regression on the defensive side in terms of total team, but you could maybe also argue the defensive coordinator position, Evero, who ended up not staying, he went over to Carolina, and aside from the Detroit Lions game that they just got absolutely shelled in, the Panthers defense has actually been very solid for a lot of stretches in games. The Panthers defense, had the offense been able to match to them, they would be a lot better. Evero is doing it fantastic in Carolina for what he has to work with. So maybe you could say that. But no, the defense is the number one reason why Denver has regressed this season to maybe even be worse than last year. And number two is Sean Payton. You can't say you're going to fix things and things somehow get worse under your watch. That's like going back in time and putting a new captain in the Titanic and somehow you crash into two icebergs at the same time, not just the one. Like, come on, bro.
Well, I feel bad for those icebergs for Sean Payton crashing into them like that. That's, not ideal. But I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say fact. It is Russell Wilson's fault. I understand the defense has been lackluster at best, but they're also in games at the very end. They've lost 5 games so far, and all except one of them have been by 12 points or less, which to me says that the offensive efficiency isn't ideal. Now, I don't necessarily know what Denver's red zone percentage is, but I don't think, a team like you bring in a quarterback like Russell Wilson for a reason. And that reason is to not have to deal with Drew Lock anymore. But secondarily, that reason is also because Russell Wilson, despite his, myriad of shortcomings, including his height, he is a guy who's won a Super Bowl. Now, granted, again, that Super Bowl was over on the first snap by Manny Ramirez to Peyton Manning, but at the same time, they still won, So, and again, in the Super Bowl that nobody really remembers, except for Bruno Mars being the halftime show participant, Russell, that was the MetLife one.
Well, no, I remember it being in MetLife. I forgot Bruno Mars was the halftime show.
Yeah. Bruno and what was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think. And I was like, "Why is RHCP here?" And they were like, "Oh, this is actually a pretty good show." Look, when you have a talented playmaker or a so-called talented playmaker like Russell Wilson as your quarterback leading your offense, you need to respond and you need to convert. And that's the reason why you're here, is to bring the Broncos back to relevance. You have good weapons. Some people are a little more mentally sane and competent than others, Jerry. But at the same time, you have good enough weapons to make it work. And so it's not happening. And part of that, I think, falls on the quarterback, because ultimately he's the guy that's throwing the ball to the receivers, handing the ball off to the running backs, using his legs to get out of the pocket if he needs to, and audibling the play if he thinks he sees something better. Now, again, his touchdown to interception ratio is good, but it's not inspiring. I'll tell you this. I believe that if the Broncos had Kirk Cousins instead of Russell Wilson, they would probably be a better team. I think if the Broncos had Baker Mayfield instead of Russell Wilson, they'd probably be a better team. If they had Ryan Tannehill, they'd be the same team, but probably worse. But
definitely worse. Come on.
Well, saying that they'd win a game, for no good reason, because that's what the Titans do. But yeah, I put this squarely on Russell Wilson. You were brought in here for a reason, and you're not getting the job done. So I put it squarely on him.
I'll say this: stats across the board for Russ. You're turning me into a Russell Wilson defender here, which has rarely ever happened. So thanks, Rick. But completion percentage, 60.5% last year, 65.9% this year. If we're going pace-wise for his stats, going to throw more passing yards and way more passing touchdowns this season than he did all of last year. Passer rating is far better than this season compared to what it was last year. 99 so far this season, 84.4 last year. And then, the QBR is such a weird stat to try to get a hang of because guys will have really good seasons and their QBR is somehow like a 70. I don't understand it. But his QBR is, very slightly up for last year. I think QBR is starting to become a metric I'm personally not even the biggest fan of anymore. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying Russ isn't a problem. I think the sole game you can put definitively on him is the first game of the season, the Raiders game. But ever since then, the defense led up 70 points to Miami. They were up 21-3 against the Commanders. And while you could say that Russell and them could have scored a little bit more at the end, absolutely. I would also argue you gave up 32 more points after holding a 21-3 lead. That's not on Russ. That's not on him at all. And the Jets game, very ugly game, fumbles by everybody on the Denver Broncos team. They must have had butterfingers before the game, and they just didn't wear any gloves because, good Lord, no one could hold on to the football for them. And then they come back against the Bears. And then the Kansas City Chiefs game, let's be real here. Did anyone expect the Broncos to win that game? No. So at the end of the day, he has some blame. Absolutely. Look, don't take this away from me. I still say Russell Wilson, fraud. But for the first 6 games of this season for the Broncos, he's not the number one reason. I'm giving him number 3. He's number 3 on this pie chart for now. No, last season he was tied for first easily. But
considering your defense of him, may this week be the week that you eat a danger witch.
That would be ironic, actually. But you know what? For the heck of it, that should be my punishment if I end up being last in this. I should get a Russell Wilson jersey since we've been talking about it the whole time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, there we go.
You do have 4 options if you think about it: NC State, Wisconsin, Denver, or Seattle. So you could pull off an NC State jersey. That'd be pretty cool.
See, here's the thing, because I didn't really have any disdain for Russell Wilson when he was in college. I did not care. My disdain for him started in Seattle, and it amplified in Denver. So I think
yes, but if you're going to get a Seattle jersey, why wouldn't you get a Geno Smith jersey? Because you love the man so much.
Which is why
because Jerry's first jersey ever owned
has to be terrible.
Punishment.
Yes.
First football jersey. Let's clarify that. First football jersey.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Where's the Connor Bedard jersey?
Shirts for now.
Okay.
Jerseys are expensive, man. They cost a lot. But actually, so I have. I should wear it one of these days. I have a Boston Bruins Zdeno Chara jersey actually. In my closet. I got that. I have. I don't know where it is now, but I know I had it for a long time. I had a Patrick Kane jersey.
Should have burned that thing.
No. I have a LeBron James jersey back home.
That as well.
New York. And I had, again, don't know where they are now. I had a Kevin Garnett Minnesota Timberwolves retro jersey.
Okay, fair.
And a Vince Carter Toronto Raptors retro jerseys.
You do? Okay, I want you to understand something. No matter what jerseys you say that you have, you're not going to beat me.
I know.
All right?
I know I'm not going to beat you. I know you have way more than me.
Timo Solani, Anaheim Ducks.
That's amazing.
Todd Hundley, New York Mets. Cole Kmet, thanks to the show. Cole Strange, thanks to the show. And Rick Vaughn, Wild Thing from Major League.
Okay, that probably puts you over. Although I will say this. Gift I got from a friend of mine, a All-Star Game Magic Johnson jersey.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
New York. Anyways.
Justin doesn't want to tell us what jerseys he has, obviously, because
it's mostly New York. I have one Minnesota Wild Jason Zucker jersey.
Obviously. Yep.
Which fun fact about that? I was in Pittsburgh earlier in the week, and I saw someone had a Jason Zucker jersey in Pittsburgh for the game, and I just looked at him like, I thought the Pens fans hated him. Why does this guy have that?
And then, it's all a bunch of New York. I got some Linsanity. I got some Mello. I believe I have a Jamal Adams jersey that has not been thrown out. I have Mark Gaston.
Hey, I'll take the Jamal Adams jersey.
Very
I'll
nice.
take that. I'll take that off your hands, Justin.
Any Testaverde. Oh, I do have a very worn out LaDainian Tomlinson jersey from the Chargers.
Nice.
When you started that with the law, I was like, Latrell Sprewell? What? That's a jersey you should have. Yeah.
Oh my God. What do you think? Is it possible to get well, I'm sure it's possible, a Latrell Sprewell jersey from the season that he choked out PJ Carlosimo?
Oh, that I want the jersey that he wore on that night.
Right?
That's a piece of his sports.
Well, didn't it happen in practice? I thought it happened in practice, not a game.
Well, just let it happen during the game. So.
Whatever he wore that day, Rick wants it.
Yeah, I want it.
How much do you think that would sell for? Easily like $50K.
No, it's Latrell Sprewell, dude. Like $39.50.
No, collectors are crazy. The last jersey he wore before that suspension, I promise you, if it went up for auction in today's world, $100,000.
But how would you authenticate it? Is the real question.
I mean, look, I'm not in the business. I'm just saying.
And I'm not saying how would you authenticate it personally. I'm saying how would a person who authenticates things do that?
Well, it's a fair question that is to be answered on another podcast that actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to the jerseys. Anyways, outstanding games, Justin. As always, you bring it per usual, and I can't wait for more next week. I feel like we're going to be in the next couple of weeks. I feel like we're going to have a lot more fact or fictions in terms of how legitimate teams are and just how terrible they are. So that's going to be fun as we go throughout the season. So, speaking of which, let's get to it. So, NFL Week 5 stories/observations. Now, typically, we tend to go throughout the games for the most part, which we might still do a little bit of that, ladies and gentlemen. But this is going to be a little bit of a different one because, I mean, it says stories/observations. We have some stories this week in the form of, over the last week and a half or so from the last time we recorded, 3 trades have happened in the league. 2 wide receivers and 1 pass rusher ended up getting dealt. So, guys, slowly but surely, trade season is looming. Watch these 3 trades might be the headline of it all. Anyways, so we had, I believe, this was definitely the first of the 3. Chase Claypool from Rick's beloved Chicago Bears was not long for Chicago, to say the very least. And the Chicago Bears decided, you know what? Someone wanted to take him. I'm pretty sure they were ready to cut him, but they needed to get something back. They traded a second-round pick for him, which it was the first pick of the second round, but because of the Dolphins' forfeit of the pick, it was the 32nd pick. So, in theory, it was kind of a first-round pick that they essentially traded for Chase Claypool. And they got absolutely nothing in value of return. And they traded him away to the Miami Dolphins, along with, this is the funny part, they traded Chase Claypool and a 7th-round pick to the Dolphins in exchange for a 6th-round pick. Oh, boy. There's a lot to unpack on that one. But before that, let's get to the other 2 trades that happened. This was the second of these 3 deals. Another player in a very similar position, acquired by a team, this time via free agency, on a relatively rich deal. It was 5 years, $70 million. The guarantee was somewhere in the $37 million range. Randy Gregory became a Denver Bronco after, issues with Jerry Jones and contract negotiations. Signed with the Broncos about a year and a half ago at this point. And it didn't go well, to say the very least. They were actually ready to cut him outright, and they were not going to keep him on the roster anymore. But at the very last second, they kept him on the roster to deal him. And who'd they deal him to? The San Francisco 49ers. In a very similar deal, it was Randy Gregory and a 7th-round pick that went to San Fran in exchange for a 6th-round pick, a rotational pass rusher in San Fran. Watch Kyle Shanahan somehow fix him. And then finally, we have the third of these trades where an actual usable player got dealt. Van Jefferson was traded from the Los Angeles Rams to the Atlanta Falcons. Van Jefferson, of course, was on the Rams team that won the Super Bowl a couple years back. Is a relatively solid vertical threat. Just, it seems really weird that Sean McVay wasn't able to make use of him, but I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that with the emergence of Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell in the offense this season, combined with Cooper Kupp returning, I think it was just a couple weapons too many. And as we saw last season with Allen Robinson, not every wide receiver is going to be able to make pay dirt at the end of the day as the Los Angeles Rams. So Van Jefferson gets dealt to the Atlanta Falcons. Similar deal, yet again, a Van Jefferson and a 7th exchange for a 6th. So 3 trades, very similar. All for a 6th-round pick, all having to get rid of a 7th-round pick. Those poor 7th-round kickers, man. But ultimately, those 3 deals happened. So, Rick, I'm throwing it to you first. Chase Claypool, alleged top 3 receiver in the league, said by himself and only himself. Not a top 3 receiver in Pittsburgh. Not a top 3 receiver in Chicago. I don't even think he's top 6 receiver in Miami. I think I would take Devin A-Chain injured compared to Chase Claypool healthy at this moment. So, with that being said, what your thoughts about the disaster that was Chase Claypool?
I mean, I'd rather take Jason Sanders at this point than Chase Claypool, obviously. But here's what I will say about it. It's a classic case where it's a guy who really high on himself and just didn't really prove it at the end of the day. It's also interesting if you think about it because maybe there's something in the water in Pittsburgh with wide receivers who are too big for their britches because AB, Juju, Martavis Bryant, now Chase Claypool. I mean, you have to now question the scouting on these wide receivers because the character of them is very questionable. And again, here's the funny part too. Chase Claypool gets traded, and what happens in the Chicago game? DJ Moore has 230 yards receiving. Yeah. So I think you're starting to see the pattern here with Chase Claypool being labeled, locker room cancer. And that's the problem because now he's on a high-flying offense, and he will not see the ball in Miami. Tua has a rhythm. That rhythm is Tyreek. That rhythm is Jalen Waddle. That rhythm is their tight ends, their running backs, Mostert. It is not Chase Claypool. He is not going to fit that system. I think it's just a matter of they needed to get him to stash him for something else. And if Mike McDaniel finds a way to use him, great. But I don't think he'll be able to. I think this is a case where this is offloading the asset that you knew failed you. And if I'm the Bears, I want that pick back because after the pick that Joey Porter Jr. made this week, I'd rather have him on that team than Chase Claypool. Very simple.
Makes sense. Very fair. Very fair there. I will sum up the Chase Claypool tenure, not just in Chicago, but I think, ever since he made those comments when he was a Steeler. I saw this was a quote. I don't know if this is a fake report. I really hope it wasn't. But like Mike McDaniel, he was asked about the Chase Claypool trade. And he's like, we didn't get Chase because we wanted we didn't necessarily need to bolster our receiving. And someone in the comments was like, oh, don't worry, you're not going to get any receiving with adding Claypool on your team. So I think ultimately speaking, it's just been a failure for this dude. And to your point, Rick, I think with Claypool among everything, it's so interesting because you bring up all the names that. Well, one of the guys CTE, one of the guy a TikTok addiction, one of the guys a substance issue before ultimately, well, the substance is now legal, but he just couldn't wait 5 years for it. I think with Chase Claypool, this is a guy of sound mind. Just I don't want to say that people shouldn't believe in themselves in any way, shape, or form. I think everyone should believe in themselves. Now, this is rich coming from me, but please bear with me here. I believe everyone should have confidence in themselves to believe they could be great at what they do, to believe that they can do a very good job at what they do. To become a professional athlete, you need to have the confidence and belief in yourself that you can play at the level with the greatest athletes in the world. And professional football, obviously, when it comes American football, I should clarify, the NFL, there have been attempts at second leagues, but let's be real. The biggest gap between the number one league in the world for a sport and whatever you would consider the number two, the biggest one is in American football. Now, is it predominantly because it's on this side of the world? Yes. But still, it lends credence to that idea. So when you consider that, does Chase Claypool deserve the idea to believe that he is good at what he does? In theory, yes. But you still got to do everything else, man. You got to put in the work. And I don't even think it's nitpicking. The amount of plays focused in on him this season that he just stopped running his route or he tried to block and he literally just stood in front of the guy, did not care. This goes back to his time in Pittsburgh, which I think the ultimate thing that summed up his time in Pittsburgh was the fact that he caught the ball. Remember this, guys. He caught the ball for a first down and celebrated, and it had to be ripped out of his hand so they could get the ball back down to spike it. And they lost, was it 8, 9, 10 seconds of play because of that? And now he's going to Miami. You said it, Rick. They don't need him. They literally do not need him. He is the sixth option on this team, if just with wide receivers. And if you consider the running backs and the tight ends, which, Mike McDaniel coming from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, which is an extension from the Mike Shanahan coaching tree, like tight ends and running backs are pretty important too. It does not matter. Like Chase Claypool is not going to make a difference here. I hate to say this about the guy, but Chase Claypool, welcome to the XFL next season. Welcome to the US.
Oh, come on.
Do you think do you think anyone is going to sign him to an NFL?
No, but why are you selling him in the XFL, man? Send him to the World League of American Football. Make him play for Cologne or Hamburg.
Play him in the Arena Football League, you're saying?
Oh, God. Yes, that thing.
The fan-controlled football league. What about that?
Yes, I like that. Johnny Manziel throws to Chase Claypool.
Yes.
You can see it happening.
But yeah, I'm sorry, man, but there is a complete reworking that needs to be done with Chase Claypool. And it's kind of sad because his rookie season, a lot of field good. Humble kid. What was he, second or third round pick from Canada? Like, he was a good player. He was actually pretty good in a time where Juju was kind of falling off for them. He was yet another example for a season of, man, the Steelers just know how to pick wide receivers in the second, third, and fourth round, and they can help make them pretty good. And it just completely fallen off from them. Complete 180 at some point needs to happen for Chase Claypool, and he's got to take his lumps. He's got to cut his teeth, so to speak, in order to earn it. Justin, any thoughts on the Chase Claypool saga ultimately ending in Chicago?
It was a huge swing and a miss for Chicago. One, they basically gave up a first-round pick for the guy and couldn't get him out of there fast enough. You look to see maybe he can revive his career in a hot passing offense because he did have some potential and he did have some high hopes when he was in Pittsburgh when he was younger. Obviously, a lot of stuff got out of hand, and now everyone likes to talk about the off-the-field kind of stuff, but it is still a person, and you kind of hope for them to play well. The thing is, he's the big target that they don't have currently in Miami. He's a guy that they can, put in red zone situations and goal-to-go situations and throw a ball over the top and maybe start to get an added dimension to that offense. He is currently listed, I think, as the 6th receiver on the depth chart, but there isn't a ton after Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I mean, Cedric Wilson's a burner, but what does he do? Braxton Berrios is 4th, and he's played well for them, but it's Braxton Berrios. It's not like he's a number 1 receiver somewhere else. You know what I mean? So, and don't get me wrong, I'm nothing against Braxton Berrios. I've loved him in New York. He's fantastic. I'll wish all the best for him in Miami. I'm excited for him, but they needed a bigger guy. And maybe that'll add a dimension in the red zone.
Since when do you ever wish well for anybody who goes to Miami?
Plenty. I hope Mike White does well too. I was so excited when he threw a touchdown to Chosen Anderson in that Denver game.
Is it Robbie Chosen? Is it Chosen? What is this guy's name?
I think it's Chosen.
We don't know
Anderson.
anymore.
Listed on the depth chart as Chosen.
Does he know what his name is?
No.
No.
Why do you think he's
listed as Robbie Chosen? Who knows? Whatever it is,
RCA.
I'm happy he caught a touchdown.
Ooh, RCA. RCA.
Come on now, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
All right. Now I do get you, Justin, and I will say this: if he wants any hopes to figure things out in his career, he's going to be a good soldier for Mike McDaniel. Like
it cost Miami nothing.
Yeah.
They went from a background 6th round pick to a high end 7th round pick and got a receiver that's not going to be if it doesn't work out, won't be on the team next year.
Yeah,
it cost them nothing.
Oh no, absolutely. I'm not saying this is bad for Miami in any which way. I'm saying for old CC himself, Chase Claypool, like he is going to have to listen to everything McDaniel says to the T. If Mike McDaniel tells you to fix your posture in the film room, you fix your freaking posture, Chase Claypool.
Of course.
Everything they say. If Mike McDaniel says, "Hey, you want to get bagels with me after practice today?" You go get bagels with that man.
Oh no! Don't get Florida bagels, man. Don't do it.
Look, I'm not saying it, but I'm saying if Mike McDaniel wants to, and he asked you, you go with him. Pick up the tab too. But ultimately, like, if you're Chase Claypool, this is your shot to completely fix the image and perception everyone has of you. Don't screw this up right now, man, because I'm telling you, like XFL, USFL, German Football League. Is there a German Football League?
World League of American Football, yeah.
There we go. Thank you. I'm just used to calling it the German league. Like, there's other spots for you, dude, and it's not where you are right now. So, I will say this: Chase Claypool, like Justin said, I hate seeing people waste their talent. So I hope he is able to put it together in Miami. I will say that. So, moving on from that. So that was the first of the wide receivers that got traded. Before we get to the lone defensive player that has been traded so far, Justin, really quick, your thoughts on Van Jefferson being dealt? Like I said earlier, a solid player, to say the very least, has had like a game or two here and there in his career where he like put up some solid numbers. I don't know if you ever faced him in fantasy and you can attest to that, but ultimately Van Jefferson just ends up being a guy that lost his spot with the Rams. Like I mentioned earlier, Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell taking that over easily there.
Yeah.
And they have become the deep threats. Well, Puka can do more than just that, but you know what I mean. Your thoughts about Van Jefferson now being an Atlanta Falcon? He joins a pretty interesting skill position group.
I understand why they traded him out of LA. And it was best for what was best for him and what was best for the team. Hopefully there's no hard feelings there. I don't understand Atlanta. I don't. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, and then maybe this guy will stretch the field and blah, 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 blah. Don't they have a really strong core of young weapons there? What's the point of giving stuff up to bring someone else in? I mean, sure, he'll be the third receiver there now, but weapons weren't the issue. I mean, between Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Ty Algier, Kyle Pitts, I mean, even if you want to go deeper and you get Mac Hollins and Cordero Patterson, Scotty Miller can stretch the field a little bit. They had Jonnu Smith, who's been doing pretty decently. Like, what? Why are you giving up assets on a young team to bring in a guy like Van Jefferson, who hasn't been known for a ton of consistent success? Again, nothing against Van Jefferson. I like him as a player. I would have loved to have had him on the Jets. This doesn't strike me as a franchise-altering move. It doesn't strike me as something that's going to improve them all that much. Like, I guess they need some depth, and maybe it was not a super expensive move, but I don't know. I mean, if you're going to make this kind of move, I would look at the Broncos, who are clearly going to blow things up. You don't think they'd give up Jerry Jeudy for a second? I mean, they got to give. They're going to have to do something. They've proven that no one's giving up first-round picks for these receivers. There's something that they're going to give up for him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I definitely get the logic.
What was the trade move for Van Jefferson? Would they give up a third?
No, I'll double check it, but I thought it was very similar to the other deals in terms of
they were similar, but also the thing you got to remember is that they're not draft picks this year coming up. They're draft picks in 2025 as well. Okay. Yeah. So trading Van Jefferson, if you read into what Sean McVay has said about it, Van Jefferson's in the final year of his rookie contract. You know, he's a respected player who's going to go to free agency. And to be fair to the guy who I think Sean McVay really likes, Jefferson wasn't getting the production that would warrant a larger contract. And so trying to get him somewhere to Atlanta, and especially an Atlanta team that his father played for back in the early 2000s, Sean Jefferson was a wide receiver back in like 0102 for Atlanta. Maybe it gives him an opportunity to go home in a sense and try and make a name for himself there. And yeah, is there wide receiver room crowded with, Mac Hollins and Scotty Miller and Drake London? Obviously, of course it is. But Jefferson's a guy who might be able to revitalize that. Again, he wasn't going to be mired in the depth chart in LA. And maybe this gives him a new opportunity for a new change of scenery. So I don't hate it. And you know what it is for Atlanta too? And it's an early move to say we're going for it. Because, here's the thing with Atlanta. I think we're all seeing the Kyle Pitts experiment is starting to crumble a little bit. Like he's not a good slot receiver. He's a tight end. So use him as that and maybe use Jefferson in that other role. So I think it kind of helps out in that regard too. So I understood it. It's kind of like a meh trade on the surface, but the more you dig into it, the more it kind of makes sense on both sides of the ball, really. But it's not a blockbuster because again, you're moving guys for picks in 25, not even 24, 25. So you're moving guys for like the next like defensive end at a Ferris State University. Like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, to Rick's point, career for Van Jefferson so far up and down. Definitely wasn't going to get a second contract at the end of the season. In 2021, 802 yards and 6 touchdowns, pretty solid. But last year, in a year where you really thought he probably could have get a little bit more, no Cooper Kupp there, only 369 yards, nice, and 3 touchdowns for himself on the season. So ultimately, it was just a struggle at the end of the day, right? And I love the fact that you mentioned the Falcons going for it, Rick, because I think this is just the first of the trades, because you mentioned the Kyle Pitts experiment and the ups and downs that has very much had in Atlanta so far. I think it's safe to say Desmond Ridder is just not that good of a quarterback. And if you're Atlanta, the NFC South is wide open. As predicted, the Saints aren't that good of a team to be considered the best one. Now, not the team that me and Justin thought would be first, but semantics. The Saints are not that good. I don't think they're that good, and I think they're only going to continue to struggle personally. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers remains to be seen. Oh, my sweet, sweet Carolina Panthers. My sweet, sweet summer children. If only Dave Tepper was not a meddlesome owner. But ultimately,
all I'm going to say is that I'm the only one of the three of us that saw Atlanta, having a shot. So
Indeed. But here's the thing. You saw them having a shot. Now, is that shot them shooting their shot to get better or shooting themselves in the foot by keeping Desmond Ridder? That is the big thing because Desmond Ridder is not the guy there to help them. But
you know who's backing him up?
Taylor Heineke.
The greatest quarterback in Old Dominion football history, Taylor Heineke.
Wow, what a list that must be.
Oh, it's a great list.
Oh my God.
Not really.
I was going to say, Rick, you could convince me that you played at Old Dominion at some point, and I know you went to Hofstra.
I think Ken Graham went to Old Dominion or something like that, something weird like that.
But. There we go. There's a standard. All right, last guy we're going to talk about here very briefly, Randy Gregory. Things have not gone well in Denver for him or anybody over the last season and a half or so, as we were talking about the Broncos earlier and their rough start to the season. And I don't really think there's a need for too much of a Thursday night preview. Sloppy game against the Broncos. They had one cool touchdown a la Courtland Sutton, and they just got nearly shut out the rest of the way. So there's your Thursday night football review, ladies and gentlemen. In regards to that deal, so they were going to cut him straight up, just say bye to him as one of the mistakes of the tenure so far of the current general manager and Patton. But they reversed course. They quickly were able to find a trade partner, and that was the San Francisco 49ers. Similar to what these other two deals were, like Rick said, picks for next year. It was Gregory in a 7th to San Fran in exchange for a 6th-round pick. Guys, Randy Gregory has not been that impressive. Really, throughout a majority of his career, like even the season that he had before he properly hit free agency for himself and got the contract from Denver, like it was fine. It wasn't anything special nor spectacular for himself when you look at that season. It was the 2021 season with Dallas. He had 6 sacks, like decent, nothing, but not great. He was just next to DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons that year, so he was able to get 6 sacks for himself. Had a couple forced fumbles. Okay, like it was decent. Gets the big deal from Denver. Like I said, after he was going to stay in Dallas, but ultimately opted out of that with clauses with Jerry Jones that Jerry Jones wanted to put into the deal, and goes to Denver. Only played 6 games last season due to injury and other things, 2 sacks in 6 games. And then this season, 4 games played, 1 sack. Just not really doing anything. You could very much see why Denver wanted to get rid of him. But he gets dealt to San Fran. So your thoughts about what that could be for for San Fran. And then this is going to kind of lead into what we're going to talk about next, the slow mechanism. Well, let's be real here. It's not kind of slow anymore. The Denver Broncos are likely going to blow this thing up. And with that being said, what we could see get torn off of that team here relatively soon. But first, Randy Gregory talk. Never thought I'd say that on this podcast. Rick, to you, Randy Gregory to the 49ers, what does that do for them, if anything?
I'm currently stoned right now, like Randy Gregory was in the 2015 NFL draft. No, I'm kidding. That's why he fell, man. He fell because of a positive marijuana test, and that was the harbinger of things to come. Look, he was a very talented player coming out of college, but he never really got it in Dallas to the point where they wanted to keep him. And then it also just didn't work out in Denver. I mean, you're right. The Broncos are blowing this whole thing up. I think, what was it? The only guy that is not on the trading block is Patrick Surtain II, which incidentally, great person to build your team around if that's who you're going to build it around, because he's a phenomenal cornerback. Look, for San Francisco on their side of it, it gives them depth on the defense, which, seeing how the injury bug has gotten them in the last year or so on some players, some of their big stars in the defense, you kind of understand why depth is a thing you need. And maybe he can turn his career around with the Niners. I mean, it could be something that works out in his favor. But to go back to Denver, they took a shot. They took a shot on a guy who didn't work out in Dallas, and it didn't work out there. And so collateral damage at this point, because, man, the Broncos are terrible. And, I don't know where he would rank on your is it his fault that they're terrible list? I think Randy's like a fringe top 10 candidate at this point. But I mean, you expected more. You expected more, and I think honestly, with him and with Chase, not so much Van Jefferson, but with him and with Chase Claypool, that is the refrain. We expected more, and now they're on their third team, and they're still very young in their careers, and it's just whatever at this point with them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and just real quick thing about Randy Gregory, because I know people are going to be wondering, well, why did San Fran take that on? With this trade, basically, this is the definition of low-risk move for San Francisco because, from what I'm seeing on Spotrac, it doesn't show any dead cap for San Francisco over the next couple of seasons. And considering the fact that, and it was relatively low guarantees on the deal initially, too, San Fran can kind of just cut him and be free of it. I think after this season, maybe there's a little bit of dead cap that just the site is not updating on right now, but it's probably minuscule compared to what you could have. Like, unless he plays extremely well, he's probably going to get cut ultimately at the end of the season by the 49ers. Yeah, you're definitely right about that, Rick. And I think of this like what the Eagles were doing last season, where they were just stacking up that defensive line with veterans because they got what they get last season at the trade deadline. They got Robert Quinn for like a 5th-round pick, I think it was, from the Chicago Bears, and they added what's his name? They added a defensive tackle. I think
Ndamukong Suh.
Look at that. So Ndamukong Suh. So it would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form if that's what San Francisco is going to be doing here over the next little bit and just adding an extra depth piece or two because it's all about the war of attrition in the NFL. Justin, any final thoughts you want to put on the Randy Gregory San Fran aspect of it? And then let me transition you to this next portion of it. In terms of the Denver Broncos fire sale that we're going to be getting here very soon, talk a little bit about the valuable pieces that Denver has in store for them, because despite the draft capital that they've lost over the last couple of seasons, which I'll get to that after you go, they have a chance to make up at least a little bit of that draft capital for future years here because of what they could sell off. So,
I don't really have a ton to say about the Randy Gregory trade. I think you guys pretty much covered it all. It is a low risk, high reward kind of move for them, and it helps him with the depth, and worst comes to worst, he's not on the team in the following years. In terms of what they have to give up in Denver, there's a lot. What's so surprising about this team is that how young they are, how explosive they seem to be on paper on both sides of the ball, and how they just straight up cannot put it together. And it's such an interesting situation because realistically, a lot of these players are going to be pretty highly coveted going into, going towards the trade deadline. You look at a guy like Garrett Bowles, who is in his 8th or 9th year there as their left tackle. There are plenty of top teams that need a left tackle. If you're willing to give up a solid pick for a guy like that, and they can recoup some draft capital and, worry about getting someone back later, that's fantastic for them. But at the same time, there are so many young pieces there too that what are you really like? I can't see them trading Marvin Mims. He's been pretty good for them. Do you think they're going to trade Javonte Williams or Jaleel McLaughlin? I don't think so. There's going to be some point where they blow it up. There is. I mean, they've already cut 2 of their top free agents acquisitions. What are they going to do now to recoup their losses? Because I don't see them getting a ton in draft capital. Certainly not as much as they've given up. But at the same time, they're young and they're really good on paper. So, I mean, I guess you don't play the game on paper, and that's why they're having these issues today. But it's an interesting situation, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, Rick, before I throw it to you, what the Broncos have traded over the last 2 off seasons to get Russell Wilson and Sean Payton: 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, 1 third-round pick, and 1 fourth-round pick. And also, let's just talk about money here real quick. Sean Payton was given a 5-year, $18 million per year deal with the Broncos when he signed. So that amounts to, if my mental mark scheme is correct, $90 million over the 5 years. And Russell Wilson was given, before any games were played last season, would be funny if it was this year, but last season, 5 years, $242 million. That is well over $330 million for the head coach and the quarterback together. And, not great, as Rick would always quotes, not great, Bob, to say the very least.
So here's the best part about all this, too, just to add your point. Let's look at that Russell Wilson trade a little more in depth, right? So the Broncos get Russell Wilson and a 2022 fourth-round pick, which is a D lineman from Iowa State, Ioma Uwazurike. The Seahawks, right? The Seahawks get Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. And of the 5 picks in that trade, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, Tyreek Smith, 5th rounder Ohio State, not a big deal. Devon Witherspoon.
Yep.
And Derek Hall.
Yep.
So this is what you call taking the best of a best situation, because Seattle drafted perfectly with those 5 picks that Denver gladly handed to them for Mr. Limited 2. And I forget what the Sean Payton deal was, because they also know the first rounder in that, right?
I think it was the first round pick that Miami traded them for Bradley Chubb. They then sent over to New Orleans.
So I'm trying to think about who was picked. Regardless, I'll figure out who was picked in that trade, anyways. But yeah, it's all about name recognition. One of the things that we always talk about is you'd rather have the draft capital, because you can try and build something out of the guys that you pick up, create a star out of a homegrown talent, a diamond in the rough, in a sense. Look at guys like Tank Dell and Josh Downs, for instance. I know we talked about him a bunch. Look at Marcus Colston out of Hofstra, a 7th round pick. Creating something out of nothing. When you swing for the big name guys and it doesn't work out, and the picks you give away end up flourishing, because let's be real here. I know he's in his first season, but Witherspoon and Hall have flourished in Seattle, and Charles Cross maybe the best offensive tackle in the class of 2022, because God knows it's not Evan Neal. And so, that's a problem. That is what you call mismanagement. That is franchise mismanagement by a group that just got into the game, really, that went for the big names because they've seen Sean Payton do commercials. They've seen Russell Wilson hawk different things. And what does it do for you? Yeah. Right now, they are 1-4 and mired in unmitigated disaster.
Yeah. So, by the way, the first round pick that New Orleans got from the trade, it was the San Francisco 49ers pick that they gave to Miami. One of the first round picks that they gave in the Trey Lance trade up deal.
Love it.
That Miami then sent, of course, to Denver for Bradley Chubb. That then Denver sent over for Sean Payton. That the New Orleans Saints used to select Brian Bresee, the defensive tackle out of Clemson,
who's been an excellent player so far in this rookie season. So
who's going to be a potential anchor on the defensive line of New Orleans for run stuffing for 8, 9, 10 years.
So if I'm all of these teams, I think about sending the Walton family some nice edible arrangements, holiday fruit baskets. Thank you for saving our team while screwing yours into the ground.
Last note for the Broncos specifically, and of course the episode is titled this way for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, Mile High Missteps. It has been a myriad of missteps, to say the very least, just in terms of pieces that I think could potentially get traded from this squad, because Justin ran through a couple of names earlier. Here's who I think are the most likely candidates. You actually mentioned him, Justin. With how Jordan McLaughlin has performed, would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form if Sean Payton was willing to let Javonte Williams get traded. If he tells Patton to trade him, because look, Javonte Williams coming back, he has not been used the way I thought he was going to be used in the Broncos offense. I thought he was going to be able to be that swing back for them, that he could go out a little bit for receiving. They've more so used Samaje Perine with it, because the 4th leading receiving yards person on the Broncos is Samaje Perine this season. Shout out to him, by the way.
He hasn't been that good either. He was ahead of the team, and
he's still the 4th leading receiver.
Not getting a ton.
No one is really thriving on this team. But I could see Sean Payton telling Patton that he'd be willing to let Javonte Williams go ultimately in a trade. Obviously, the top 2 receivers on this team are going to be up there in discussion in Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton, 4 touchdowns this season, which doesn't sound phenomenal, but it's also Denver, so you got to consider that. And Cortland Sutton, I think, could probably fetch you a pretty penny. Maybe if a team is desperate enough, a first-round pick, but I would say more so a package headlined by a second-round pick and maybe 2 other depth picks, like a second, third, and fourth, something along those lines, or second, third, and fifth, something closer to what the Christian McCaffrey trade was ultimately. Maybe a little bit of a difference there because we know there was no first-round pick involved in that deal, and the San Francisco 49ers got who's likely the offensive player of the year this year because, bang, he's good. Should be the MVP, but, we hate running backs apparently in this league. Jerry Jeudy, of course, could be traded ultimately probably for a – You mentioned if Atlanta could have negotiated and like what you could have gotten. I think a team could probably have Jerry Jeudy for a third-round pick at this point. He just has not – like his stock has not gone up in his career at all. And funny enough, not the worst Alabama wide receiver taken in that draft class, not the biggest flame out for a receiver in that draft, to say the very least. It all comes crashing down for these Alabama wide receivers from that draft class.
What round was he taken in by chance?
The first.
Exactly.
There you go.
Never draft someone from Alabama in the first round, kids.
And then defensively, it's kind of like they're already starting to try to play younger players for Denver. But obviously the key name that would garner the most interest ultimately on the defensive side of the ball would be Justin Simmons, the former Pro Bowl safety. I believe he's also made an all-pro team. Still a very good player. 29 years old, which, a little bit up there in age, but he's still been pretty fantastic for himself. And outside of he only played 12 games last season, but a pretty good model of consistency in his career. Played 4 straight seasons from 2018 to 2021 of clean bill of health football, and has played 4 of the Broncos games this season. I, too, would try to sit out one of the games if I was him, so I don't blame him for the missed game at all. And still, interception, pass deflected. I think he might also be a guy where you can maybe, if a team is desperate enough, if the trade market for him gets hot enough, you could get a first-round pick for. But again, maybe a package that's once again more second-round pick orientated with other depth picks in there. Ultimately, there's some solid stuff on this team. I think Courtland Sutton and Justin Simmons are going to be the top 2, like in terms of assets you get. And I think just Jerry Jeudy for no longer being needed on the team is going to be traded.
And remember what we said too going into this season about this Denver defensive line, about who are these guys? Who are these guys that are on there? Well, Denver's defense currently has 14 sacks, 9.5 of which are by 2 of their linebackers. So their defensive line of the cast of no-names has really been a cast of no-names.
Yep, and they're going to keep both those guys because both those linebackers that you mentioned, Rick, Jonathan Cooper, and Nick Bonito, both below the age of 25. Or yep. One of them is 25, one of them is 24. So they're not going anywhere.
Bonito's good, man.
Oh, yeah, he's pretty good. 5.5 sacks to lead them. The fact that he's got 5.5 sacks with no one to help him with pass rush is actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Not much to trade aside from Simmons. And as you said, Rick, they're going to keep Surtain. There is some semblance of what you could trade here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're just never going to get those first-round picks back that you lost in that Russell Wilson trade. And probably tough to get the caliber player, but you can try to make up for it with the depth picks and go from there. George Patton, man. I fired a couple people on this podcast. Justin's fired coaches. Rick has fired the entire Chicago Bears front office right now.
I fired countries, man. Come on now.
Indeed. I think ultimately Patton needs to be considered here as someone who's got to be, because you've had I think you've had a decent amount of time, and in this stretch of time for him, it's a lot of draft whiffs and a lot of free agency whiffs. And look, Walmart's willing to spend the last two off seasons. You got the new quarterback. You got a new head coach. Now, in theory, you might be needing a new quarterback here relatively soon. Why not get a new general manager in the fold? Because I don't know, man. If a Broncos fan wants to chime in, which I know is not on this podcast, I'm more referring to the viewers. If someone who watches this, it happens to be a Broncos fan, if you think I'm being too hard on the guy, I'll listen to it. But I think he's had time. Do you guys not think so? I think he's had some time here.
The fact of the matter is that we do broadcast this live on YouTube and on Twitter for the whole world to watch. And Denver Broncos fans can easily find this podcast. The fact that they haven't yet, much like Russell Wilson had not even found the end zone in a very long time, is just a testament to how that whole entire spiel is for Denver and their fans.
Yes. And the one argument I would hear is this is only his 3rd season as GM. I'm saying this right now. Not been a great 3 seasons.
Not great, Bob.
They've somehow regressed every single season.
George, right? Is that his name, George?
Yeah, George.
Yeah. Not great, George.
Not great, George. Not great at all, to say the very least. And this is, funny enough, Sean Payton, this is already his 2nd head coach that he hired. Mm-hmm. Technically 3rd because he inherited Vic Fangio in his last season, but let's be real here, he wasn't going to keep Fangio to begin with.
Yeah.
So, bad times all around. All right. To wrap up this segment to an extent, and we're probably going to be doing this actually the next couple of weeks. On the spot here, boys. one team because the trade deadline is approaching here within the next couple of weeks. If memory serves, the exact date of the NFL trade deadline this season is pull up and load for me. October 31st.
Ooh.
So in 17 days,
Very spooky,
is the deadline. And we have a couple shows until then, which I think is going to be the perfect time. So over this episode and the next two that we have, ladies and gentlemen, the three of us are each going to give you one team that we expect to be some sort of active in the deadline, whether they be buying or selling. You can pick either or to your heart's content, boys, over this little bit. So who wants to go first in terms of a team that they are looking to be a buyer or seller come this trade deadline? I can go first if you guys want.
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
A team that I am going to be expecting to be a buyer in this trade deadline is ultimately the Detroit Lions. Lions have the lead in the NFC North right now, a very strong lead in the NFC North. They're 4-1, potentially 5-1 at the end of this weekend. With how the Packers are going, they might be 2-4. So you extend that lead even further. I think the Lions have played pretty good to start the season, but I think we've also seen in a handful of cases that, again, good team, still some things they could improve on a little bit. There was that Seahawks game weeks ago where they led to 37 points. The Panthers were able to get 24 on them. The Packers got 20. Now, I know some of those scores sound relatively low, and of course, the Lions' high-power offense is as is, but you got to think about this. If you're the Detroit Lions, as of right now, I believe they would be third in the NFC, which is pretty good, right? That means in the second round, you're going to see either the Eagles or the 49ers, and you need a little bit more defensively. So it would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form if the Denver Broncos tried to go along the defensive side of the ball in terms of their additions that they could get. I think it would just make sense just from a need-based perspective. And I know, well, maybe this is more so mentioned when it comes to the draft in terms of like, do you draft for need or do you draft for something else? I think they could use a little bit more. And one thing that I think they could do, even though they're decent pass rushing, I think they could still use way more pass rush. You mentioned, how many total sacks did the Broncos have, you said, Rick? 14?
14.
The Detroit Lions only have total 14 sacks right now. So yeah. I think maybe a little bit of pass rush could be in store for the Lions personally. Going into the season, I would have said that secondary would have been a concern. Now, could they still address it? Absolutely. But you have Jerry Jacobs, who for all intents and purposes has played fine enough so far this season with 3 interceptions for himself. Brian Branch has done a phenomenal job ultimately as well in his rookie campaign. So the defensive secondary has been solid. I wouldn't say no to an extra addition there. You don't have to limit yourself to one trade here, NFL teams. You just don't. So I wouldn't say no to maybe another piece in that secondary, but I think pass rush needs to be the way that they go here ultimately for the Detroit Lions. So that is going to be my first team that I say here over the next couple of weeks who I think should be active at the trade deadline. A buyer, Detroit Lions.
I'll give you a buyer as well, but not for the position you're thinking of. The Jets. The Jets should be a buyer right now because of the fact that, there's a lot of talk about them trying to get a new quarterback in, possibly Kirk Cousins or Ryan Tannehill. But what about getting Kirk Cousins as lineman? What about getting Ezra Cleveland from Minnesota to try and shore up that offensive line? Elijah Vera Tucker is out for the season. You're starting Max Mitchell. You've got Billy Turner there. Mekhi Becton's been a bust. So why not get a decent offensive lineman who you can probably control next year when you have Aaron Rodgers back? I mean, if you think Zach Wilson's good, and look, he was pretty good this past week against Denver. I mean, anyone's good against Denver, but he was pretty good against Denver. If you think that he's going to still be a good enough quarterback to try and help this team, which is very talented, why not try and get an offensive lineman in that aspect there? So I think that's really their main focus. And I think because Minnesota is where they are, I think the Jets can hop on that and try and make it a decent enough deal to get Ezra Cleveland, to bring him over to New York and try and have him shore up that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, just to mention it earlier with the Broncos, I know I didn't bring his name up when we were talking about pieces that could be dealt, but, you talk about Garrett Bowles from Denver. I think some teams could actually be trading some offensive linemen at this deadline, and, this is what we're here for. This is the offensive lineman trade deadline here this season in the NFL. This is that time. But no, it's like we always talk about, one of the tropes that we talk about when it comes to NFL is, games are won in the trenches. There's some teams that could use some trenches, some help in those trenches to get better. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. That's a very good one, Rick, to say the very least. So, Justin, what do we got?
What about Baltimore?
Ooh.
Baltimore is another team that they seem to win games, but they lose games that they shouldn't, and they're always competitive. I know that they have a ton of injury concerns, so And last week, even though they lost, they had a lot of drop balls, specifically in the end zone. Why not go out for one of those Broncos receivers? Why not see, hey, listen, we got draft capital. We're good. Zay Flowers has been good for us. Odell's kind of banged up. Mark Andrews needs some help. Why not see if Cortland Sutton's available? Why not see if Jerry Jeudy's available? They tend to be buyers at the trade deadline every year, and it's always defense. And every year, everyone is clamoring, why don't you pick up a receiver?
Yeah, that's been a major concern in Baltimore. And you're right. We've heard that year in and year out with them. What's the deal? So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a great point with that one, Justin, because even despite the fact that they did make improvements in the receiving core from last year compared to this year, they still need more.
Well, this is what we said was going to happen. Odell's going to miss time. He's coming off his second major surgery. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. He's been in and out of relevance. He really hasn't been relevant in 2 to 3 years now. He was very good in the Super Bowl, but outside of that, what has he really done? And now you're having an issue where Lamar's got to run the ball all the time. Their running backs are hurt. Their offensive line is okay. And now they have receivers dropping balls. And that's just something you cannot have happen after you pay your quarterback that much money in the offseason. You got to get some reliable pass catchers in there.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Absolutely, to say the very least. So the three of us go with buyers this week, a hat trick of buyers on this week of the pre-analysis before the trade deadline. I hope it's a relatively active trade deadline. I don't know if we're going to get this kind of deadline we got last year per se, but we hope for excitement. We're transaction-based fans, so we love the idea of that. So that ends the trade talk of the show. It'll continue over the next couple of weeks, and ultimately speaking, we can let's start to put a wrap on things here, boys, because we mentioned a good amount of teams, a good amount of results, relatively speaking, from Week 5. Let's just quickly go down what happened in Week 5, just so that people are aware of, I think the key points here. The Chicago Bears got their first win of the season.
Woo!
As the three of us correctly predicted during the episode last week, the Chaos After Dark show, where we were recording during that game.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were up like 14-0 when we made that prediction.
I'm counting this as a W for all of us.
They did it for Butkus.
Exactly. Continuing on from that, going back to last Sunday, the Jaguars beat the Bills in London again. So 2-0 are the Jags against the Bills in London over the last couple of seasons. The Colts beat the Titans in another example of Mike Vrabel Mike Vrabel and his Titans are just not that good. The Saints destroyed the Patriots 34-0. Is this the end of Bill Belichick? Everyone to say. I know you two are very much happy about it for Justin's what was a continued amount of torture and what Rick discontinued after the end of last season.
I think it's the end of him as general manager.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, he cannot be.
Can't do both, Bill.
He was able to get away with it for so long, but it can't be the case anymore. It just can't be. And I sent you guys the meme, but the scene in Captain America Winter Soldier where they're all just trying to get Rogers in the elevator. They're just gang up on him and trying to magnetic stick his hands to the elevator, which, by the way, even if he had gotten that, I think he would have probably broken free from that. But irregardless,
he would have.
Yeah, this is the dude in that same, not that same movie. It was the next Captain America movie where he just one hand holds a helicopter towards the side of the building. I think he would have snapped the metal, but irregardless, you have that was the joke made of the Patriots trying to make sure Bill Belichick, with a top pick this year, doesn't draft a D3 long snapper in the first round, which I don't think we could actually rule out that possibility anymore. It's the end of his time as GM, and I think the only thing that's keeping him there as head coach too is just the respect Robert Kraft probably has for him, which should be lessened and lessened, because how do you continue to start Mac Jones over Bailey Zappi? We don't understand on this podcast. We never will.
Terrible.
We never will. But there's that. The couple notable things: the Dolphins beat the Giants. The Giants continue to falter, like someone said on the show before the season started. The Bengals defeated the Cardinals, so they are trying to ramp up their season as it gets going. The Ravens, as Justin noted when he talked about a buyer, completely fell apart. John Harbaugh with yet another questionable fourth down decision where he could have just taken
the points.
Thank you. You had the chance there. Steelers go on to score 17 straight points, including Kenny Pickett audibling out of a Matt Canada play and getting the game-winning touchdown to George Pickens.
It's so beautiful, man.
Phenomenal camera work, too,
Yeah.
on the replay as well.
Yeah.
And then the Eagles beat the Rams, the Jets beat the Broncos in the Nathaniel Hackett revenge game. The Chiefs beat the Vikings in a game where, once again, it was decided by Kirk Cousins throwing an interception. And then the Packers and Cowboys games highlighted the fact by their quarterbacks both threw 3 interceptions. Now, if I told you Jordan Love would throw 3 interceptions in a game this season, you probably would have believed me. If I told you Dak Prescott would have thrown 3 interceptions in a game this season, again, you probably would have believed me, but you heard him before the season. He was like, I'm not going to throw 10 interceptions this year. Yes, you are, buddy. Yes, you are.
Adam Shine, man. You're wrong.
42-10. The San Francisco 49ers beat up the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, my God, pal. Was...
Well, you know what the problem was, Jerg? They didn't have Ezekiel Elliott as a starting center.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Say what you want about Zeke. Dak didn't get sacked the last play of the NFC divisional game last season.
The best damn center in Dallas.
Exactly. They got rid of him. Justin, as me and Rick have fun with it, what were your thoughts about that game? First off, Brock Purdy, 4 touchdowns in it. George Kittle, 3 of those touchdowns going to him, including his little thing with the shirt that he did, that he got fined for, as expected. Your thoughts about what that game said to us about either side, really?
Well, it put Dallas where we thought Dallas was, and it put the 49ers where we thought the 49ers would be, and that is in the lead or on one of the top teams in the NFC, period. I was going to say the NFC West, but period. It's really a 2-team race there, and I think that the Eagles have maybe taken a small step back. There's a little something off with them compared to what they were last year. So, I mean, I think it's clear that the 49ers are the team to beat in the NFC right now. Now it's still early in the season. Whether or not that changes, we'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting beat because they held them down, and there was really nothing they could do about it. And for a team that is as good as Dallas is, it was a bad beat. I mean, the only thing that they did was they held Brandon Ayuk to, 45 yards, and that was really it. But they couldn't stop Kittle. Debo had a good game. Christian McCaffrey has a good game every week, and the defense was dominant. So it's going to be hard to beat this team.
Yeah, and you look at the fact that the running game was non-existent, which I think it's now happened multiple times for Dallas this year, where just the running game just goes silent. Tony Pollard didn't have that good of a game. Deuce Vaughn, who I know he's not the backup running back necessarily, but this season has just been a struggle for him. He has exactly 20 carries on the season for exactly 40 yards. 2 yards a carry is not good. Now, I'm not saying that's completely on him. I know part of it is just the inconsistency of what Dallas's offensive line has been this year compared to years past. But Dallas, I think this firmly puts them second in the second tier in the NFC. We were talking about tiers going into the season, particularly in the NFC, because it was such a wide gap between 1 and 2. Like you said, Justin, even though they're not exactly showing the same level of dominance like they did last year, the Eagles are still very much obviously we all know this. They're still very much in tier 1. And Dallas is very firmly in tier 2. And they were supposed to be competing for the top of the tier 2 teams. I think it's safe to say they're not right now. They need to show. Look, the Cardinals' loss was one thing, and they answer back with the win against the Patriots. You're not facing the Patriots this week. You are in primetime football, Monday Night Football in Los Angeles, which is probably going to be a pseudo home game for them, basically, because no one ever goes to LA for those football games. And you're facing a quarterback coming off of a bye who can throw for 400 yards on any defense.
And their former offensive coordinator.
Yes, revenge game. Mm-hmm. Revenge game for Kellen Moore.
But also, let's be real here. What's the perfect remedy for the next week after a 32-point loss? Facing Brandon Staley.
Oh, yeah. But on the other side, Rick, it's Mike McCarthy.
So we're calling this one a tie too? Is that what we're doing?
I think what we're calling this is a coaching disaster class.
Yes. Do not watch this game if you want to be a coach in the NFL.
Yeah, this is the thing. Kids, if you want to see what good coaching looks like, stay away from this game. But if you want to see Justin Herbert throw the football and CeeDee Lamb catch a football, hopefully, well, it's debatable how much you want to see this game, actually. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That being said, guys, let's move on to the main event segment of the show where all the chaos gets going, fists to fly, taunts are made, and points are won. It is week 6 of this hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, where every single week during the NFL season, Rick, Justin, and I are going to go through the slate of games that we have for the given week, and we're going to pick games based off a 4-to-1 point selection. For us, 4 points being, of course, the highest, the one that we're most confident in, 1 point being the least confident in that we have, compared, relatively speaking, to the 3 that preceded. We must all pick at least one, or actually, no, we'll go back to that. You can't pick a tie. It must be used with your first pick, and it's worth 5 points. If you go perfect in a week, you get a +1 perfection bonus to your score, so that gives you 11 points in a given week. And as I was about to say, we must all always pick at least one upset pick. It cannot be any lower. Well, the lowest it can be, is your 2-point pick. So it cannot be your 1-point pick in any way, shape, or form. You'll be shamed on the show if you forget to make an upset. Well, we just won't let the guys forget, actually. So to be fair, we're actually pretty good with that. And of course, I mentioned upsets. I mentioned favorites. We need to figure this out. So we personally use the lines that are given to us by our friends at
Caesar Sportsbook.
Thank you, Justin. And I think that's all the preamble needed. Guys, week 6. We're going to get to it. But before we get to it, we need the standings, of course, for the season. And, of course, the greatest keeper of the standings, the keeper of the keys on this show, the Podfather himself. Rick, let's do it.
By the way, you do have a Wheel of Chaos made for Billy's picks, correct? Because he's got some games. Okay, just making sure. So we have an interesting standings this week, gentlemen, because we also have our very first streak watch of the 2023-2024 season, which I think is going to be very exciting for all of y'all. So Billy Shakes is in last place with 9 points after his pseudo-perfect week last week. He had one game, then he had the 3-point multiplier. Justin had a good week last week, so he's in third, but it's close. He's at 31. Jurg, you were hurt by the Monday night game, of course, so you could have had 36, but you have 34.
Last time I'm putting my faith in Jordan Love.
Exactly. And for the third week in a row, I'm in first place. I have 37 points. Now, do you want to hear the interesting streak that we have going on? We have Streak Watch 2023/2024.
Absolutely, because for the most part, I feel like we kind of know what's happening with these streaks, but I feel like this is going to be something that me and Justin have overlooked here.
Well, hopefully Justin hasn't overlooked this. Justin is currently 5-0 with his 3-point picks this season. He has not missed a 3-point game so far this year. So I think it's pretty impressive.
Nice.
Yes.
Is that the only streak that's happening right now?
That's the only streak that's happening so far, at least the one that I've seen. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could do a whole how is Dirk pick with San Francisco? He's won every game, obviously, but we're not going to do that. So anyway, as we're mentioning, so we go with snake format. So the gentleman with the lowest point total will pick first, up through the top, where I will pick my 4-point and my 3-point, snake down all the way through, or as John Gruden would say, Jerk.
Serpentine.
Thank you. So Justin, the floor is yours for your 4-point pick in week 6.
So I am torn between two teams. But I think I'm going to have to go with what I think should be a more of a sure thing, and that's going to be the Buffalo Bills against the New York Giants. The Giants just can't seem to do anything right at this point, and the Bills, I'm sure, are not happy about losing a game in London last week. Sunday night in Buffalo, it really shouldn't be close.
Not to mention, this is also an interesting double revenge game for Buffalo, for the Giants, rather, if you think about it, because Brian Dable and Tyrod Taylor, who was going to be the starting quarterback because Daniel Jones is out, which is why the line jumped to 15 for Buffalo this week. So,
yep.
Jerk?
So as Justin was kind of alluding to there's multiple games that have double-digit spreads this week, actually. And I know most people would conventionally think, oh, he's going to go with the other game there. But I'm not, actually. Because I'm going to go with the game that's close to it and probably should be a double-digit, but it ain't. And I'm riding the hot hand here. 9.5-point favorites in Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson is out for the game. Give me the I can't speak this week. Give me the San Francisco 49ers with my 4-point pick.
That was my other one. I was, but you know what? I said Cleveland's got a better defense. And if it becomes a close defensive battle, I mean, I know that they don't have their top 2 offensive players, but yeah, That's right.
I don't blame you, but if it becomes a defensive battle, you have a defense. Yes, on one side has Myles Garrett. The defense on the other side has Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So
very fair. Very, very fair. So you kind of served it up on a silver platter for me, but I've got a weird feeling about this game.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's ripe for a trap. It feels like the team that shouldn't win should win and might win. Because something funky usually happens when the line is this big and when one team thinks they're so much better than the other and the other team just finds a way to rally around. The only problem is that if it was any other coach but Frank Reich, I would believe it. I don't. Miami over Carolina is my 4-pointer this week. So I'm going to handle that game myself. And at 3, I'm tempted to pick an upset. And as you know, I do my personal picks before the season, before any injuries happen, just to kind of give myself the fairest shake here. I'm tempted to go with an upset. But I don't necessarily know if I'm going to do that. I might save it for 2 points because I really doubt that you guys are going to take any of those games until 2 points, or even at all. So I will hold off on my upset pick here, and I will take a team that I think is going to hit their stride at just the right time.
Oh, I know who he's picking.
And that would be a game that may see their head coach not be on the sideline because Mrs. McVay might be giving birth on the day of. So I will take the LA Rams over the Arizona Cardinals at 3.
That was going to be my 3-pointer.
Yes, it was.
I think this is
You took Miami and Los Angeles?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
This is the 3rd straight week that Rick has sniped me.
Listen,
specifically on my 3-pointer. That's a streak.
Man. Listen, man.
That's a streak. We have 2 streaks going on.
Take the lead, and then you can do it to me all you want. You have a 3-point choice now, though, Jer. So
I do. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but I do.
Yeah.
See, this is a very interesting week because of how a lot of these spreads are, because they're so close in a lot of these games that you could see it going either way. Like Commanders, Falcons, I think you could go either way. Seahawks, Bengals could go either way. I'm personally, it's not my official pick. I'm just saying I'm personally leaning towards the Bengals at the time because I think they, like, when you were talking about hitting stride, there was 1 or 2 teams that I thought you were talking about. It was the Bengals and the Rams.
Yeah.
I will say this, like, I think even more so than last week. I like the upset slates last week. I'm a very big fan of these upsets this week here potentially. And, there's a game that I really want to pick, but I think this is even more of a trap game compared to the one you were talking about, Rick, potentially with the Dolphins. So I'm actually going to hold off on that game here potentially. And I'm going to, I think for the first time in a long time, I'm going to go with an upset pick for my 3-pointer.
Okay.
And I am going to go with the team. The team.
That did you wrong so many weeks in a row.
No, I'm not picking them.
Okay. That's fine.
No,
That's
wait.
fine then.
Oh, they are playing this week. I completely forgot about it. Have I ever picked a London game? I don't think so.
I don't believe you have, actually.
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily start now.
Yeah. No, trust me.
Just saying.
I'm not. No, with my 3-point upset pick, like I said, a lot of upsets that I like here. If I had got to just stick with one, well, I do have to just stick with one because it's only one game I get to pick here at the moment. I am going to go with the upset of upsets. Give me the Chicago Bears over the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson's out. Kirk Cousins can think he's a good passer all he wants. Like, he doesn't have his top weapon anymore. Their head coach may or may not be doing things to players in practice, according to rumors. And Justin Fields is looking great. The Minnesota Vikings defense has been bad this entire season. Give me the Bears for a massive 3-point upset here.
And there goes one of my upset picks.
You thought we were going to avoid these.
No, I mean it's a weird game, is what it is. By the way, I have you from week 2 of last year picking an upset at 3 points, and you lost.
What was the game?
New England over Pittsburgh. You picked the Steelers.
Yeah. I did?
Yeah, you did. And they lost to the Patriots.
The Patriots weren't the underdogs.
No, not in that game. Because I think, it was game 2 of the Kenny Pickett experiment. So
Fair enough.
yeah, Justin.
Hey,
What's up, buddy?
what's going on?
I don't know. I think it's your turn to pick 2 games.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh,
if that's the case, then I'm going to pick the Lions over the Buccaneers. It's only a 3-point spread. I'm shocked by it. I think it should probably be a better, higher spread for them, but
yeah,
we'll see.
It should probably be at least like 6.5, maybe 6.
Yeah. And then as my upset pick, I'm going to pick Houston.
It's a good
Houston
one.
is an underdog home against the Saints. I know that Saints defense is good. They may be missing Tank Dell, but hey.
Not bad. The Texans, there's a little bit of a grace period here. I think it's another week or 2 before we start to kind of fall out of love with them being an upset pick that we like.
That's true.
Because, man, I was so big on them against the Falcons. Anyways, all right. I had a feeling this game was going to come back to me because of Justin's personal credence when it comes to this game and one of these teams. And
I thought about it.
I'm still confident about the result. I just didn't want to put it with my 3-pointer, but I'll use it with my 2-pointer. Give me the Eagles over the Jets.
You picked your upset pick?
He did.
Bears over Vikings, 3-pointer.
Yeah, Bears Vikings is an upset pick. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. What do I do here?
I will say this. I think
do?
me and Justin have taken 2 of the picks you were considering. We took Bears and Texans, which I know you were considering both of those.
Well, no, the Texans I wasn't considering.
Nah, that's a lie.
I had the Saints as a favorite in that game. So, how weird do I want to get with this one? Is
Go
the
real
question
weird.
that I
You're in
have.
first place. Nothing can hurt you.
That's true. Maybe I should just take both upsets and call it a day. That might be fun.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm tempted to do this because it's an even numbered week. And even though they're the underdog, it's an even numbered week. So I'm tempted.
Do it.
I'm tempted.
Do it.
However,
Skill issue.
However,
Soft. S.
No. There's an upset that I'm going to take
A.
that is
W.
risky as hell,
F.
but I'm going to take it anyways.
T.
Patriots over the Raiders at 2 points. Look, at some point, it has to end. Yes.
The McDaniels.
Yes. At some point, it has to end. McDaniels being a coach or Mac Jones being a failure. At some point, something has to give. And as much as I think the Titans-Ravens upset is fun, I think this is the game that New England turns it around because there's something about Bill Belichick coaching for his life that just makes it even more interesting to me. So, and I will say this: considering that I'm up by 3 points on Jerk, I can play around my 2-pointer and have some fun. So,
Oh, okay, you cheeky little bugger.
I know I'm very cheeky on that end.
Justin, were you thinking the same thing when he said Bill Belichick coaching for his life? He ain't getting fired after this game.
No, first of all, if anything will happen, they'll part ways and he'll join the Hall of Fame with Tom Brady and blah, blah, blah.
Well, yeah.
The only thing that I'm thinking is they're missing so many players. It's in Vegas. Like, there's no Juju. They're missing. Gonzalez is done.
Yep.
They're missing Judon.
J.C. Jackson ain't helping them.
So many people. I think they got a lineman out. Like,
Yes, I agree with you on all of that. However, what's the one thing that we were never sure of? Whether Josh McDaniels knows what the hell he's doing. Well, no, whether Josh McDaniels knows what the hell he's doing on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So
Which kind of doesn't. They
exactly.
This is the funny part. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions. The Raiders still almost lost that game.
Exactly. So you're never really sure with Josh McDaniels. So that's why I have that.
Right.
And now let's see. My 1-pointer. My 1-pointer. You know what? I like it. Let's roll with it. Tennessee goes to 3-3. I'll take the upset over Baltimore and London.
All right, so he's going to lose 3 points there.
But I might still have 7 by the end of it. So
very true, actually.
Yes.
All right, my 1 point pick is here. I just want to go through. All right, remaining games for myself and Justin, just so we know our full slate.
Atlanta, Washington.
Yep.
Cincinnati, Seattle.
Yep.
Jacksonville, Indy.
Yep.
And Dallas Chargers.
Yep. See,
you want lines?
No, I have the lines. I appreciate it. I will say this: if Taylor Heineke was starting, I'd be very tempted to pick Atlanta.
That's why I didn't take it, because I know he's not.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
Colts Jaguars is both the one I'm the most confident in, arguably, and at the same time the one I'm least confident in, relatively speaking, which is funny. And then Bengals Seahawks, I think is very tempting, but man, the question is, do I want to wait till Monday night for my slate to be done? Is the question.
Somebody has to.
In theory, it could be the Pirate. Ultimately speaking,
it could be. It could be. Probably won't be, but it could be.
You know, if it was any other backup QB other than Gardner Minshew, I would actually even be tempted to take that game. But Gardner Minshew against the Jaguars, the original revenge game,
could be fun.
Could be very fun to pick with that game. Man. Oh man. Give me Chargers over the Cowboys for my 1 point pick.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with Justin Herbert. I have full faith in him. Only thrown 1 interception so far this season. Dak Prescott's thrown 4. And I know this Chargers defense hasn't necessarily been special to start the year, but they've kind of been roundabout. Like, they've been better the last couple of weeks. And coming off a bye, I think there is a renewed feeling there that they should be having. And Dallas got stomped. And look, you can only get so many revenge wins for yourself after a bad loss this season.
I agree with that.
I don't think that's coming in this one.
Yeah. Justin, you have the final pick.
I'm glad you picked that game, Jared, because I was tempted to pick that game over this one. Although I was going to have the opposite pick. I mean, to me, it should be a slam dunk for the Cowboys. This is the worst defense the Cowboys have played, and this is the best defense the Chargers have played by a lot. I'm going to go with the Jags over the Colts. No Anthony Richardson. The run game has been strong, but they turned the ball over a couple times against the Jags the first time, and they were at full strength. So I'm going to pick the Jaguars to continue their hot streak.
Very good. Very good indeed. So that pretty much concludes it for us, I think.
There it is.
All right.
That being said, though, there is still 2 more games to be selected.
Yes.
So Rick, bring out the boy. He's there somewhere. There he is. Look at him in all of his pirate hat wearing glory.
I'm a little jealous of the mustache, by the way. Never grow one on my own. So
I think we all kind of are. Although me personally, I'm definitely way more of a beard guy. But in the same essence. All right.
Okay.
Well, we do have our favorite, the Wheel of Chaos, is back and beautiful than ever. 2 games this week for the Pirate. So we have the multiplier as it stands. We have 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, and 5x plus 1.
Are you sure about this?
Well, let's make it so that both games are worth 1 point, and then that's what takes x.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you don't want to give him an upset special.
I mean, make one of them an upset.
All right. Well,
he only has 2, so the first one doesn't need to be an upset. It's kind of different rules that we got to take with him.
That's fair. In any event, the selections are Seattle over Cincinnati. That's an upset.
Mm-hmm.
And Atlanta over Washington.
There it is. So those 2 points will be inserted. And the question is, what will the multiplier be?
Spin your wheel, Jurgen. Arr.
I was waiting for the voice.
I gotta say, I love algebra.
Hold on. Oh my goodness.
I love algebra.
So the wheel has deemed it so. And actually, by the way, here really quick, Justin can't say anything about the whole 5x plus 1 because there is no clean multiplication for 2 to get to 11. It would have to be 5.5. So take that.
Well, 3x plus 2, which is what we did last
Shut
year.
it. Anyways, that's what it's going to be, ladies and gentlemen. That is the complete of it all. Rick, summarize our picks for the people.
Certainly. So, just so we all have the understanding clear here, the Pirate is picking Seattle over Cincinnati and Atlanta over Washington. Both are 1-point picks with the 5x plus 1 multiplier. That would be 11 should he go perfect this week, which only gets him to 20. So we're good, by the way. Justin's 4-pointer is Buffalo over the Giants. At 3, Detroit over Tampa. At 2, Houston over New Orleans and an upset. And at 1, Jacksonville over Indianapolis. Jurg, you have San Francisco over Cleveland at 4 points. Chicago over Minnesota at 3 points in an upset. Philadelphia over the Jets at 2. And the Chargers over Dallas at 1. Also an upset pick, but not the big upset that we all care about. Myself, I go Miami over Carolina at 4. The Rams over the Cardinals at 3. The Patriots over the Raiders at a 2-point upset. And the Titans over the Ravens in London and a 1-point upset pick for the week. So, lots on the line here, gentlemen. So,
Indeed. I think this is going to be the interesting portion here of the schedule as we get going here. So that ends the Week 6 edition here in 2023 of the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge. But we're not done yet, ladies and gentlemen, because if you are familiar with the show, which I think at this point nearly everyone watching us probably is, we'd like to end the show on a little bit of a fun note, as always.
Well, before we do that, there's something you need to know about.
Well, lower third's already up, so just.
Well, I know. So this week, week 6, I believe is cursed because last year in week 6, Jurg, you picked San Francisco at 4 points and lost.
Okay.
And that was the start of a winless week for you.
Eh.
I picked Tampa Bay over Pittsburgh in what I thought was a massive win. They lost, and that got me a winless week.
Oof.
Justin went 3-1 on week 6 last year. And wouldn't you know it, our mascot had one game at one point on the wheel and got these 10x plus 1 multiplier.
There you go.
And won. So I believe we are cursed. So if we can do better than we did last year, I think we'll be okay.
Well, for two of us, that's not that high of a bar.
Well, I mean that's true, but I mean, listen. If Justin goes perfect this week, then it's all candy and nuts and gravy and cigar bets and whatever it is.
Well, think about it. If it goes opposite compared to last year, you and me will be good, Rick, and he'll go like 1-3.
I don't want to wish that on him. He's been very nice to me lately. So
I'm not saying. I'm not wishing. I'm just saying if we go by the law of opposites, that's how it would go. I
mean, yeah. I think the law of opposites only works for Albanians and Irish Scotsmen, though, not for Justin's. In any event, this has been a weird week. It's been a very weird week personally, and a weird week professionally. And so I want to do something that's a little different in a way. I'm trying to mix and match a few different things here or there. My number 3 rant podium for this week has been really bugging me for a very long time, and it's been bugging a lot of people, I think, for a very long time. And it's the Burger King commercial singer. Pick a freaking key and stay in the damn treble clef. Like, this is the most tone-deaf singer that I've ever heard since the D'Agostino law firm radio commercials that you hear on ESPN radio. It's the key is in like a G, and he's singing in an E, and it's just like it's the most grating thing I've ever heard. And also, like, his lyrics are terrible, regardless. Like, Burger King. First of all, no one likes your food. That's just a commonplace there. Number 2. This is a marketing campaign that's terrible. Bring back the real Burger King, because this is just have it. The BK have it your way. It's old. It's tired. It's played out. Change your slogan. Do something different, because it ain't working anymore for me. Number 2, I want to talk about a very weird collaboration that I discovered recently. There's a company called Goose Creek Candles. Now, like Yankee Candle and all those other they're like a niche candle company. And so I saw this, I think, the other day on social media. They're trying to get into nostalgia territory in a way. So they have a collaboration for their candles and their scents. Now, when I say the word collaboration, most people think, "Oh no, what's going on here?" Because collabs are just so much fun, right? They're great. This is Goose Creek Candles and Little Debbie, which means you could possibly buy a honey bun scented candle or an oatmeal cream pie scented candle.
If they make a Swiss cake roll scented candle, I'm buying 50 of them.
They do have a Swiss cake roll scented candle. But they also have a fudge round scented candle. And if you've ever smelled a fudge round, let's just say that you're not improving the smell in your bathroom after you leave it. So, like, good effort. Nice try. C, but this is a little gimmicky for my taste. I'm more of a sandalwood type of guy, or vanilla. Vanilla's always good, but a little gimmicky for my taste here. And now we get to number 1, and here we go with a personal one. So Stop and Shop has been in my crosshairs several times on the Rant Podium for bad deli lines and for other things. But this is not so much about the store itself. It kind of is, but it's more about the people in the store. So, let me explain something to you. There is a line in Stop and Shop for like self-checkout. And that's for the people who don't want to talk to anybody. They're introverts, they hate people, much like my wife, the antisocial social worker, which we all know of. Yes. She's glad to have that title. So, if you're going to be in that line to do all the work you can to not talk to anybody, then use the scan it gun. I can't tell you how many times I'm standing in line with the 6 registers that are there, and the one that is scan it gun customers only, and I have the scan it gun, so I'm done with my shopping. And there are 10 people in front of me who are just standing there with their groceries because they aren't club members who never got the gun, because here's the fun part. You take the gun, you scan it, you put your stuff in away, you go to the register, scan the barcode, pay, and you run along. So while you're over there juggling 95 moon pies and 27 boxes of tissues, while your 3-year-old's running around the store trying to knock off all the bakery items, you have failed in your one mission, which is to get a Stop and Shop rewards card. Now, I understand, but it's only 1 per household, or, if you live in the same household, you don't get the rewards. Yes, you do. It's called get to the gas station first and get the gas reward before your mom does. You 39-year-old virgin. So, basically, if you're in that line and you're not using the scan it gun, I am going to push you out of my way from this point forward. And actually, the one time that I was in there most recently, I actually said out loud, no one has a scan it gun for that line over there for that register. And then all of a sudden, the Stop and Shop attendant said, anyone using the gun? And I was like, yep. And I sashayed and walked my way past all those stupid other people, including those 2 Italians in their velour tracksuits. Like, not my fault that you don't know how to do things, guys. Not my fault. I know. And the scan it line should really only be for scanned customers only. Like, it should only be for that. So it makes people who are antisocial do the work of actually going to the register and talking to the clerk of the register. Like, it's a natural experience talking to the person behind the cashier. It really is. And if you're going to do half the work of not wanting to talk to them, just go all the way. No one likes things done halfway. Adam, Duncan, no one likes it done halfway. So do it the full way. That's what I say. Nice. Thank you.
Do it the Rick way, ladies and gentlemen. Live your life like Rick.
Living like Larry.
Living like Larry. Living like Rick. Living like the Podfather. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we get one step closer to Stop and Shop joining Adam Rank and Duncan onto the forever podium list, I would like to call it. That concludes this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. The beginnings of us discussing the trade deadline, which will continue over the next couple of weeks. Interesting results throughout the NFL season in terms of games. And, of course, another week of the Pick Challenge down. Who will be in first place next week? Well, might still be Rick, or maybe will it be somewhere else? Who will be in first? Who will gain momentum? Will the Pirate ever catch up to us? He might actually figure all that out and more on next week's edition of the show. Thanks so much for joining us on yet another fun-filled edition of the show that was highlighted, of course, as always, by fun, football, and the chaos. Take care, everybody. See you next time.